Jiwon held her breath and watched the small fish swim between the coral branches. The water was warm and clear around the Philippine Islands. She had been studying these reefs for 3 years now. Each day brought new discoveries about how the tiny creatures lived together in this underwater world. She adjusted her diving mask and checked her oxygen tank. 30 more minutes before she had to go back to the surface. The coral looked healthy here, unlike many places where it was dying. Jiwon made notes on her waterproof tablet about the colors and shapes she saw. A shadow passed over her. She looked up, expecting to see a large fish or maybe a boat. Instead, she saw something that made no sense. A dark shape hung in the water above her, but it was not natural. It had smooth edges and glowed with a soft blue light. Before Jiwon could react, a beam of light shot down from the object. Everything went white, then black. Far away in the mountains of Korea, Do-hyun was leading a group of hikers down a difficult trail. Snow covered the rocks, and the wind was getting stronger. He had been a mountain guide for 8 years and knew these peaks better than anyone. "Stay close together," he called to the group behind him. "The weather is changing fast." One of the hikers, an older man, was having trouble keeping up. Do-hyun slowed down and helped him navigate the icy rocks. This was what he loved about his job, helping people see the beauty of the mountains while keeping them safe. The group stopped to rest near a small cave. Do-hyun checked his radio and GPS device. Everything looked normal. They would reach the base camp before dark. Then the sky changed color. A green light spread across the clouds like nothing Do-hyun had ever seen. The other hikers pointed and took pictures with their phones, but Do-hyun felt something was wrong. His grandfather had told him stories about strange lights in the sky, warnings from the old days. The light got brighter. Do-hyun tried to push the group toward the cave, but it was too late. The world disappeared in a flash of green. In Seoul, Nari was finishing her 3rd surgery of the night. Being a medical resident meant long hours and little sleep, but she loved helping people. The patient on the table had been in a car accident. She worked carefully to repair the damage to his liver. "Good work, doctor," said the senior surgeon. "You can take a break now." Nari washed her hands and walked to the hospital roof for some fresh air. The city lights spread out below her like a carpet of stars. She was tired, but there were still 2 more operations scheduled before morning. She was about to go back inside when she noticed something odd. A star in the sky was moving. Then another one, and another. They moved in patterns that did not make sense for airplanes or satellites. The moving lights came closer. Nari realized they were not stars at all. They were ships of some kind, but unlike any aircraft she had ever seen. They were completely silent and moved in ways that seemed impossible. One of the ships stopped directly above the hospital. Nari tried to run, but a beam of yellow light surrounded her. She felt her body becoming heavy and slow. The last thing she saw was the city getting smaller as she was pulled up into the sky. Kyung was teaching a survival class in the woods outside the city. His students were learning how to build shelters and find clean water. Most of them were office workers who wanted to learn basic outdoor skills for weekend camping trips. "Remember," Kyung told them, "the most important thing in any survival situation is to stay calm and think clearly." He had learned these lessons during his time in the Special Forces. After leaving the military, he found that teaching others gave him purpose. Helping people become more self-reliant was important work. The class was practicing how to start a fire without matches when strange sounds came from above the trees. It was not the sound of helicopters or airplanes. It was something else entirely. A deep humming that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Everyone stay together," Kyung ordered. His military training kicked in automatically. He scanned the forest for threats or escape routes. The trees began to shake, even though there was no wind. Leaves fell like rain around them. Then the students started screaming and pointing at the sky. Massive shapes moved between the clouds. They were dark and angular, nothing like any human technology. Kyung counted at least 6 of them, each one larger than a building. "Run!" he shouted. But it was already too late. Beams of light shot down from the ships, striking random targets across the forest. Where the light touched, people simply vanished. Kyung tried to help his students escape, but one by one the lights found them. When the beam hit Kyung, he felt a strange tingling sensation. Then everything went dark. High above Earth, inside one of the alien ships, Huntmaster Thexvar reviewed the day's collection. His species, the Vorthak, had been hunting across the galaxy for thousands of years. They had perfected the art of capturing primitive species for sport. "How many specimens did we gather?" he asked his assistant. 237 from this planet, Huntmaster. They appear to be at a basic technological level, perfect for the hunting preserve. Thexvar nodded with satisfaction. The Vorthak Empire had rules about which species could be hunted. They only took creatures that had not yet developed space travel. It was considered unsporting to hunt advanced civilizations. These humans looked promising. They were bipedal and seemed reasonably intelligent, but they had no real weapons or advanced technology. They would provide good entertainment for the noble families back home. "Prepare them for transport to Nexus 7, Thexvar ordered. "Make sure they are healthy and alert. The hunt is no fun if the prey is weak or sick." The assistant bowed and left to carry out the orders. Thexvar looked at the blue planet below through the ship's viewing screen. It was a beautiful world, full of interesting creatures. Perhaps they would return here in a few years to collect more specimens. He had no way of knowing that this routine hunting expedition would become something very different. The Vorthak had hunted hundreds of species across dozens of worlds. None of them had ever provided any real challenge. These humans looked no different from any other primitive species they had captured. They would run, they would hide, and eventually they would be caught. It was always the same pattern. Thexvar smiled as he imagined the entertainment these creatures would provide. The noble families enjoyed their hunting games, and fresh prey was always welcome. These humans would probably last 3 or 4 days before the hunt was over. It would be amusing while it lasted. The ships turned away from Earth and began their journey to Nexus 7, the great hunting preserve. In the holding cells below, Jiwon, Dohyun, Nari, Kyung, and hundreds of other humans lay unconscious, unaware of what awaited them. The Vorthak had made many assumptions about their new prey. They would soon learn that assumptions about humans could be very dangerous indeed. Jiwon woke up with a terrible headache. The floor beneath her was cold and smooth, like metal but not quite the same. She sat up slowly and looked around. She was in a large room with curved walls that glowed with a soft white light. Other people were waking up around her. Some were crying. Others sat in shocked silence. Jiwon counted about 40 people in this section of the room. She could see more sections beyond metal barriers, each filled with confused and frightened humans. Where Are we? Asked a woman in a nurse's uniform. Ji-won recognized her accent as Korean. She moved closer to the woman. I don't know. I'm Ji-won. I was diving near the Philippines when something took me. I'm Nari, the woman replied. I was at the hospital in Seoul. There were lights in the sky then. She touched her head where there was a small bruise. A man with strong shoulders and careful eyes was helping an elderly person sit up. He moved like a soldier, checking on people and organizing them into groups. When he reached Ji-won and Nari, he spoke quietly. I'm Kyung. We need to stay calm and figure out what's happening. Have either of you seen our captors yet? Before they could answer, another man approached them. He was wearing hiking clothes and had a practical way of moving that reminded Ji-won of her mountain-climbing friends. I'm Do-yun, he said. I was leading a group in the mountains when we were taken. Most of my students are here somewhere. He looked around the room with worried eyes. Ji-won felt better knowing she was not alone. These three people seemed calm and smart. If they were going to survive whatever this was, they would need to work together. Look, Nari whispered, pointing at the ceiling. Something was moving up there. At first it looked like shadows, but then Ji-won realized they were watching cameras or sensors of some kind. Their captors were studying them. A loud sound filled the room, like metal grinding against metal. Part of the wall slid open and something walked in. Ji-won had seen many strange creatures in the ocean, but nothing like this. The being was tall, maybe 8 feet, with gray skin that looked like it was made of scales. It had 4 arms and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. When it moved, she could hear clicking sounds, like a large insect. More of these creatures entered the room. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. The humans pressed back against the walls, but there was nowhere to run. One of the aliens stepped forward. When it spoke, the words came from a small device on its chest. The voice was flat and mechanical. You are now property of the Vorthak Empire. You will be used for entertainment in the Great Hunt. This is an honor. Many species across the galaxy have served this purpose. An older man near the front of the group stood up. You can't do this. We're people, not animals. The alien turned toward him. You are prey. Nothing more. The creature pressed something on its weapon. A beam of blue light hit the man, and he collapsed. Ji-won could see he was still breathing, but he would not wake up. Anyone else wish to speak? The alien asked. The room became very quiet. Good. You will now learn the rules of the hunt. A section of the wall became transparent, showing images, like a movie screen. Ji-won saw a vast landscape with forests, mountains, deserts, and rivers. It looked almost like Earth, but something was wrong with it. The colors were too bright, and the shapes of the trees were strange. This is Nexus 7, the greatest hunting preserve in the galaxy. You will be released into this environment with basic survival equipment. You will have 48 Earth hours before the hunt begins. The images changed, showing the same aliens but wearing different equipment. They had armor and larger weapons. Some rode on creatures that looked like a mix between horses and lizards. The noble families of our empire will hunt you for sport. If you survive for 30 days, you will be given your freedom. No species has ever lasted more than 8 days. Kyung raised his hand slowly. What kind of equipment will we get? The alien seemed pleased by the question. Simple tools, knives, rope, basic shelter materials, nothing that would make the hunt unfair. How many of you will be hunting us? Do-yun asked. That depends on how entertaining you prove to be. Usually 1 hunter for every 10 prey creatures is sufficient. Nari spoke up next. What happens to the injured? Will you provide medical care? The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. Medical care is not part of the hunt. The weak die quickly. This improves the sport. Jiwan felt sick, but she forced herself to ask her own question. Have you done this to other species? Of course, humans are species number 93 in our records. You appear more interesting than most. Your brains are larger, and you show more varied emotional responses. The alien touched its weapon again, and the images changed. Now they showed creatures that looked like different versions of humans, some with fur, others with different skin colors or body shapes. All of them were running through forests, being chased by Vorthak hunters. These were taken from nearby. Star systems all provided adequate entertainment before they were eliminated. Eliminated? Kyung asked, though Ji-won could tell he already knew the answer. The hunt always ends the same way. Complete success for the hunters. The room filled with the sounds of people crying and praying. Some humans were getting angry, shouting at the aliens. Others seemed to shut down completely, staring at nothing. Ji-won looked at her 3 new friends. Kyung was studying the aliens carefully, watching how they moved and held their weapons. Do-hyun was examining the room, looking for weak points or escape routes. Nari was checking on the people around them, using her medical training to help. Those who were having panic attacks. You will be transported to Nexus 7 in 6 hours, the alien announced. Use this time to prepare yourselves. Form groups if you wish. Say goodbye to those who are weak. They will not survive long. The aliens left as suddenly as they had arrived. The wall sealed itself, leaving the humans alone with their fear. We need to talk, Kyung said quietly to the others. But not here. They're still watching us. They moved to a corner of the room where the lighting was dimmer. Ji-won pretended to be upset while the others gathered around her as if they were comforting her. We can't give up, Kyung whispered. I've seen combat situations that looked impossible. There's always a way to fight back. But they have advanced. Weapons and technology, Do-hyun said. We'll have nothing but basic tools. Maybe that's an advantage, Nari suggested. They expect us to act like the other species they've hunted. If we do something different, something they don't expect, we might have a chance. Ji-won thought about her years studying marine life. In nature, the prey species that survive are the ones that adapt quickly, the ones that learn new behaviors when their environment changes. What are you thinking? Kyung asked. They said no. Species has lasted more than 8 days. Maybe that's because all the other species tried to run and hide. What if we don't do that? The 4 of them looked at each other. They were facing impossible odds against creatures with superior technology and weapons. By all logic, they should be planning how to hide and hoping for the best. Instead, they were beginning to plan something very different. Around them, other humans were forming their own groups. Some were families trying to stay together. Others were people with useful skills, doctors, engineers, teachers. A few individuals sat alone, already giving up hope. We need to bring in more people, Do-hyun said. Organize everyone into teams with different skills. Carefully, Kyung warned. We don't know if there are listening devices in here. Over the next few hours, they moved through the room, quietly talking to other humans. They found a construction worker who knew about building things, a chef who understood food and nutrition, a computer programmer who might be able to figure out alien technology. When the aliens returned to transport them to Nexus 7, they found something they had not expected. The humans were no longer scattered and afraid. They had organized themselves into groups with clear leaders and plans. The Vorthak didn't think this was important. Prey animals often gathered together when they were scared. It never made any difference in the end. They had no idea that these particular prey animals were already planning to hunt back. The transport ship landed on Nexus 7 with a sound like thunder. Jaiwan felt the floor shake beneath her feet as the doors opened. Bright sunlight poured in and she had to cover her eyes. When she could see again, she gasped. The hunting preserve was enormous. Mountains rose in the distance, covered with forests that looked almost like earth trees, but with leaves in colors she had never seen. Rivers wound through valleys, and she could see what looked like a desert far to the south. "Move out," ordered one of the Vorthak guards. "You have 10 minutes to collect your equipment before release." The humans were herded toward a large pile of supplies. Jiwon grabbed a backpack and started filling it with useful items. A knife, rope, a small pot for cooking, some dried food, and a thin blanket. The equipment was basic, but it was better than nothing. Kyung was moving through the crowd, whispering to people. "Remember the plan. Scatter at first, but find each other again after dark. Look for my signal fires." Nari grabbed medical supplies, bandages, antiseptic, and pain medication. "If someone gets hurt, find me," she told everyone she could reach. Do-hyun was studying the landscape, memorizing the positions of rivers and mountains. "The high ground will be safest," he muttered. "They'll expect us to hide in the forests." "Time is up," shouted the alien guard. "You have 48 hours. Use them wisely. The hunt begins at sunrise the day after tomorrow." The Vorthak ships lifted off, leaving the humans alone in the vast preserve. For a moment, everyone just stood there, overwhelmed by the size of their prison. "Go!" Kyung yelled. "Spread out! Remember what we discussed!" The humans scattered in all directions. Some ran toward the forests. Others headed for the mountains or rivers. It looked like panic, but it was actually planned. Each group had specific tasks and meeting points. Jiwon ran toward a stream she had spotted from the transport. Her job was to find safe water sources and study the local plants and animals. As a marine biologist, she understood how ecosystems worked. This knowledge might help them survive. She reached the stream and immediately started testing the water. It looked clean, and she could see small fish swimming in it. Good. That meant it was probably safe to drink. She collected samples in small containers and marked the location on a crude map. The first plant she examined looked like a earth fern, but the leaves felt different. She broke off a small piece and smelled it. The scent was sharp and unpleasant. She wrapped it carefully and put it in her pack for later study. Moving along the stream, she found more plants. Some looked familiar. Others were completely alien. One bush had berries that looked like blueberries, but she didn't dare eat them yet. She would need to test everything carefully. As the sun began to set, she saw a thin column of smoke rising from a hill to the north. That was Kyung's signal. She gathered the samples she had collected and started hiking toward the meeting point. Other humans were already there when she arrived. About 30 people had found the hidden camp that Kyung had chosen, a small cave behind a waterfall where the sound of falling water would hide their voices. "What did everyone learn?" Kyung asked once they were all inside. A man named Jong-soo had been exploring the forest. "The trees are strange, but they'll burn. I found good wood for making spears and arrows. Also, there are animals, something like rabbits, but bigger." Nari had been setting up a medical station. I found people with injuries from the landing. Nothing serious, but we need to be more careful. This environment has dangers we don't understand yet. Ji-won shared her discoveries about the water and plants. I think some of these plants might be poisonous, but I need more time to test them properly. Do-hyun had been scouting escape routes. The geography is confusing. It's like they took pieces of different worlds and put them together. The mountains don't follow normal patterns. That makes sense, said Min-hee, the computer programmer. This is an artificial environment. They probably designed it to confuse prey animals. Kyung nodded. Which means we need to map it ourselves. Tomorrow we split up again, but this time we're not just running. We're gathering intelligence. What about the other humans? Asked Nari. The ones who didn't come here? Some groups are hiding in other areas. That's good. It spreads out the targets. But some people are just running in panic. We need to find them before the hunt starts. They spent the night planning and preparing. Jong-soo showed them how to make simple weapons from the wood and rocks they found. Ji-won worked on identifying which plants were safe to eat. Do-hyun taught basic camouflage and hiding techniques. The next day, they spread out again. But this time, they were not just prey animals running in fear. They were scouts, gathering information and preparing for war. Ji-won made an important discovery near a swamp. She found a plant with thick, waxy leaves that burned with a terrible smell. When she tested it on a small animal, the creature became sick and ran away. The plant was toxic, but not to humans. She also noticed something else. The small animals in this area were acting strangely. They kept looking up at the sky and running to hide under thick bushes. Something was making them nervous. That evening, she returned to camp with exciting news. I think I found something we can use as a weapon, she told the others, and the animals are acting like they know something is coming. The hunt starts tomorrow at sunrise, Kyung said. They're probably preparing their equipment and vehicles. Which means tonight is our last chance to get ready, Do-hyun added. They worked through the night. Using Ji-won's toxic plants, they made poison for their spear tips and arrows. It wasn't deadly to the aliens, but it would make them sick and slow them down. Min-hee had figured out how to use some of the alien equipment they had stolen from the transport site. These devices seem to be communication tools. I can't understand the language, but I can track the signals. That means we can know where they are, Kyung said with satisfaction. As dawn approached, they could hear sounds in the distance. Engines starting up. Strange animal calls. Probably the creatures the aliens used for hunting. The sound of voices speaking in the clicking mechanical language of the Vorthak. Remember, Kyung told everyone, they expect us to run and hide. Instead, we're going to do something they've never seen before. We're going to hunt them back. The first Vorthak hunting party appeared just after sunrise. 3 aliens riding on creatures that looked like giant lizards with 6 legs. They carried energy weapons and wore light armor. They moved confidently through the forest, following the obvious trails left by fleeing humans. They had no idea that other humans were watching them from hidden positions in the trees above. Kyung waited until the aliens were directly below his hiding spot. Then he gave the signal. Ropes dropped down around the aliens, tangling their weapons. Sharpened spears rained down from above, aimed at the weak points in their armor that the humans had observed during captivity. One alien was knocked from its mount and hit the ground hard. The toxic plant poison on the spear tips began working immediately. The creature started making sick, clicking sounds and moved much more slowly. The other 2 aliens tried to fight back, but they were confused and disoriented. They had never faced prey that attacked from above. Their training was for chasing running animals, not for dealing with coordinated ambushes. The fight was over quickly. The humans had captured their first Vorthak hunter. "Don't kill it," Kyung ordered. "We need to learn from it." They tied up the alien and dragged it to a hidden cave. While some of the humans stood guard, others began studying their captive. They examined its armor, weapons, and equipment. Nari used her medical knowledge to understand the alien's biology. "It has 4 hearts," she reported. "The poison affects its nervous system, but it's not fatal. It'll be sick for several hours." Jiwon studied the creature's equipment. "These tools are much more advanced than anything we have, but they're not magic. They follow scientific principles we can understand." Minhee worked on the communication device. "I'm starting to recognize patterns in their language. Give me more time and I might be able to understand some of it." Do-hyun examined the hunting mount, the 6-legged lizard creature. "It's fast but not very smart, and it's afraid of fire." By the end of the first day of hunting, the Vorthak had lost 1 hunter and learned that something was very wrong with this hunt. The humans were not running in panic as expected. Instead, they seemed to have disappeared completely. Even worse, some of the hunting parties reported feeling like they were being watched. Equipment went missing from their camps. Strange. Noises came from the forests at night. Huntmaster Thexvar reviewed the reports with growing confusion. "Increase the hunting parties," he ordered. "Send out teams of 5 instead of 3. And tell them to be more careful." He still thought this was just unusual behavior from a slightly more clever species. He had no idea that down in the preserve, the humans were no longer thinking like prey, they were thinking like predators, and they were learning fast. 3 weeks had passed since the hunt began. In the command center of Huntmaster Thexvar's ship, alarms were sounding for the 4th time that day. "Another hunting party has gone missing," reported his assistant Gextar. "That makes 7 teams we have lost contact with in the past week." Thexvar stared at the displays showing Nexus 7. The preserve looked peaceful from space, but he knew something terrible was happening down there. In over 200 years of hunting, he had never lost even 1 hunting party to prey animals. "Send down a scout ship," he ordered. "I want to know what is happening." Far below, in a network of hidden caves and tunnels, the humans had built something that would have amazed the Vorthak if they had known about it. It was a command center that rivaled anything the aliens had. Minhee had spent days studying captured Vorthak technology. She had learned to read their displays and understand their communication systems. "Another scout ship is coming down," she reported to Kyung. "They're getting scared." "Good," Kyung replied. He was cleaning an alien energy weapon, one of dozens they had captured. Fear makes enemies make mistakes. The human base had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. They had connected natural caves with hand-dug tunnels, creating a hidden city beneath the preserve. Water flowed through channels they had carved from underground streams. Air moved through shafts that reached the surface in hidden locations. Nari ran a medical center that was better equipped than some Earth hospitals. She had learned to use alien medical devices and had trained a team of assistants. "We've had remarkably few serious injuries," she told Kyung during their daily planning meeting. "The toxic plants Jiwon discovered have been incredibly useful for treating Vorthak wounds." Jiwon had become their expert on the preserve's ecosystem. She had mapped the location of every useful plant and animal. More importantly, she had learned to breed and train some of the local creatures. The six-legged lizards they use for hunting can be tamed, she explained to a group of new recruits. They're actually quite intelligent. Once they accept you as their leader, they're completely loyal. She led them to a hidden valley where dozens of the creatures grazed peacefully. Humans moved among them, caring for them and training them. The lizards had become their cavalry. Do-hyun had mapped every mountain, valley, and river in the preserve. But more than that, he had turned the entire environment into a weapon. Every trail has hidden traps, he told the planning meeting. Every cave has escape routes. Every river crossing has ambush points. The humans had stopped thinking like prey animals. They had become apex predators. Their success had attracted other humans from across the preserve. Word spread through hidden communication networks about a group that was fighting back. People began making dangerous journeys to join them. A woman named Sumi arrived with 30 other survivors. "We heard you were actually winning," she said to Kyung. "Is it true?" Kyung led her to a storage room filled with captured Vorthok equipment. Weapons, armor, vehicles, communication devices. Enough to outfit a small army. "We're not just winning," he said. "We're preparing for something bigger." The scout ship that Thexvar had sent down never reported back. The humans had shot it down using captured alien weapons and taken the crew prisoner. They now had 5 live Vorthak captives and had learned a great deal about their enemies. "They have a rigid social structure," Nari explained after studying the prisoners. "Each individual has a specific role, and they cannot adapt when that role is threatened. It's like they're programmed to behave in certain ways." Minhee had broken their communication codes. "I can now understand most of their language, and more importantly, I can send false messages to their command ship." "What kind of false messages?" Kyung asked. "I've been reporting that the human prey animals are all dead or hiding in deep caves. The hunting parties are having great success. Everything is going according to plan." This deception had bought them time, but it couldn't last forever. Eventually, the Vorthak would discover the truth. "How long before they figure it out?" Do-hyun asked. "Not long," Minhee admitted. "Maybe a few more days. They're starting to ask questions about why they can't communicate with their hunting parties directly." Kyung made a decision that surprised everyone. "Then it's time to stop hiding. Tomorrow we reveal ourselves." "Are you crazy?" asked Sumi. "They have ships and advanced weapons. We'll be slaughtered." "Will we?" Kyung smiled and led the group to another part of their underground base. They emerged into a vast cavern that took their breath away. It was an aircraft hangar, filled with machines that looked like a mixture of human engineering and alien technology. Ji-won figured out how their anti-gravity systems work, Kyung explained. Minhee learned to program their computers. Do-hyun designed the tactics. Nari kept everyone healthy while we worked. Together, we built these. The flying machines looked crude compared to Vorthak ships, but they were functional. They were fast, well-armed, and designed specifically to fight the alien hunters. "How many do we have?" Sumi asked in amazement. 12 operational, with more being built every day," replied Jong-soo, who had become their chief engineer. "We've also built ground vehicles and defensive systems." "But how is this possible? We've only been here for 3 weeks." Kyung's expression grew serious. "You have to understand something about humans that the Vorthak don't. When we're threatened, we don't just fight, we innovate, we adapt, we become something new. Every human you see here has contributed something unique," Nari added. "Teachers became strategists, Doctors became weapons experts. Artists became engineers. We're not the same people who were captured on Earth. That night, the humans prepared for their first major offensive. They had spent weeks learning everything they could about their enemies. Now it was time to use that knowledge. The attack began at dawn. Vorthak hunting parties across the preserve suddenly found themselves surrounded by humans riding the six-legged lizards they had once used for hunting. But these were not desperate, fleeing prey animals. These were disciplined cavalry units. With alien weapons and coordinated tactics, at the same time, crude but effective aircraft appeared in the skies above Nexus 7. They struck Vorthak's supply depots and communication centers with precision and skill. In the command ship above, alarms sounded continuously. "What is happening?" Thexvar demanded. "The prey animals," stammered Gextar. "They're attacking our forces. They have weapons. They have vehicles. They're fighting like what?" "Like soldiers, Huntmaster. Like an organized army. The displays showed scenes that should have been impossible. Humans in makeshift armor riding alien creatures into battle. Flying machines of human design. Shooting at Vorthak hunters. Coordinated attacks on fortified positions." "This is not hunting," Thexvar whispered. "This is war." For the first time in the history of the Vorthak Empire, prey animals had become predators. The hunters were being hunted, and they were losing. The battle raged for 3 days. By the end, the humans controlled half of Nexus 7. They had captured most of the Vorthak ground forces and destroyed their ability to communicate with the command ship. More importantly, they had proven something that would send shock waves through the galaxy. Humans were not just another prey species. They were something the Vorthak had never encountered before, a species that became more dangerous when threatened. In the underground command center, Kyung looked at reports from across the preserve. They had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. "They'll send reinforcements," he told his leadership team. "Bigger ships, more weapons. They won't underestimate us again." "Are you worried?" Nari asked. Kyung smiled grimly. "No. I'm excited. We've proven we can fight them. Now let's prove we can beat them." Outside, human patrols moved through territory that had once belonged to their captors. They rode alien creatures, carried alien weapons, and spoke a mixture of human languages and Vorthak military terms they had learned from prisoners. They were no longer the people who had been abducted from Earth. They had become something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They had become predators. The Vorthak War Council meeting lasted for 6 hours. Representatives from the most powerful families in the Empire gathered on the flagship above Nexus 7. They had never faced a situation like this before. "Impossible," declared War Chief Vexmar, of the Red Claw family. "Prey animals cannot defeat trained hunters. These reports must be wrong." Huntmaster Thexvar activated the display screens. Images from the preserve showed scenes that made the council members hiss in shock. Humans wearing Vorthak armor, human-built aircraft attacking alien positions, Vorthak hunters in cages being studied by their former prey. The humans have taken control of 60% of Nexus 7, Thexvar reported. "They have captured or killed over 300 of our hunters. They show no signs of stopping." Elder Kexnoth, the oldest member of the council, leaned forward. "How long since the hunt began?" 37 days. 37 days. The elder's voice was filled with disbelief. The previous record for prey survival was 8 days. These creatures have not only survived, They have thrived. "What do you recommend, Hunt Master?" asked War Chief Vexmar. "We must deploy the Apex Hunters. This has gone beyond a simple hunt. We are facing a military threat." The council members looked at each other with concern. The Apex Hunters were elite soldiers, used only for the most dangerous missions. They had never been needed for a hunting expedition before. "Do it," ordered Elder Kexnoth. "But be warned. If the Apex Hunters fail, this will become a matter for the Imperial fleet." Far below on Nexus 7, the humans had built something that amazed even themselves. In just over a month, they had transformed from scattered prisoners into a functioning civilization. The underground city now housed over 400 people. They had workshops where teams built aircraft and weapons, laboratories where Jiwon and her assistants studied alien biology and chemistry, training facilities where former civilians learned military tactics from Kyung and other veterans. "The Vorthak are bringing in their best soldiers," Minhee announced during the morning briefing. She had been monitoring alien communications. "Something called Apex Hunters. They'll arrive in 2 days." "How many?" Kyung asked. 50. But they're much better equipped than the regular hunters. Advanced armor, personal shield generators, weapons that can destroy our aircraft. Do-hyun studied the tactical displays. "They'll expect us to fight the same way we did before. Ground attacks and airstrikes." "So we do something different," Nari suggested. "What would they never expect?" Jiwon had been working on a special project for weeks. "I think I have something that might help, but it's dangerous, and we'll only get one chance to use it." She led them to a sealed laboratory deep in the underground complex. Inside were dozens of containers filled with a glowing blue liquid. "I've been studying Vorthak biology," she explained. "Their respiratory system is very different from ours. They can breathe our air, but there are certain chemical compounds that are harmless to humans, but deadly to them." "You made poison gas?" Kyung asked. "Not exactly. It's more like a biological weapon. The compound causes their immune systems to attack their own bodies. It's not fast, but it's completely incurable with their medical technology." "How do we deliver it?" Do-hyun wanted to know. "That's the clever part," Jiwon smiled. "We don't attack them directly. We infect their food and water supplies. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late." The plan was risky and complex. Teams of humans would have to infiltrate Vorthak supply areas and contaminate their resources without being detected. If they were caught, the entire operation would fail. "I'll lead the infiltration team," volunteered Sumi. She had become an expert at moving unseen through alien territory. "I'm coming with you," said Jong-soo. "You'll need someone who understands their equipment." "And I'll coordinate from here," added Minhee. "I can monitor their communications and warn you if they discover the contamination." 2 days later, the Apex Hunters arrived. They were impressive and terrifying, twice the size of regular Vorthak, wearing armor that seemed to absorb light. Their weapons hummed with barely contained energy. They established a fortified base camp in the center of the preserve and began systematic sweeps of the surrounding territory. Unlike the previous hunters, they moved carefully and methodically. They scanned for traps, communicated constantly with their base, and never separated into small groups. "They're good," Kyung admitted, watching them through long-range surveillance equipment. "Much better than the others." The first battles between humans and Apex Hunters were brutal. The aliens' advanced equipment made them nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. Their shields deflected energy weapons, and their armor was too strong for captured Vorthak firearms. But the humans had learned to be patient. While the Apex hunters searched for them, Sumi and her infiltration teams were completing their mission. They contaminated water sources, food supplies, and even the air filtration systems in Vorthak vehicles. The biological weapon worked slowly and silently. For the first few days, the Apex hunters noticed nothing wrong. They continued their operations, growing more confident as they captured several human outposts. Then the symptoms began. It started with fatigue and confusion. The elite soldiers found themselves making small mistakes, missing obvious tracks, forgetting to check their equipment, losing focus during important missions. "Sir," one of the Apex hunters reported to his commander, "I'm experiencing some difficulty concentrating." "As am I," the commander replied. "Perhaps it's the different atmosphere on this planet." By the end of the first week, half the Apex hunters were too sick to continue operations. By the end of the second week, most of them were dead. The few survivors retreated to their base camp and sent desperate messages to the command ship. But it was too late. The biological weapon had already spread to the ship's crew through contaminated supplies. Huntmaster Thexvar felt the first symptoms just as he was preparing to call for Imperial Fleet reinforcements. His hands shook as he tried to operate. "The communication equipment." "Sir?" asked Gextar, who was also showing signs of illness. "Should I send the distress signal?" Thexvar looked at the displays showing Nexus 7. Human aircraft were flying openly above the preserve. Human ground forces were moving through territory that had once belonged to the Vorthak Empire. The prey had become the predators, and now they were hunting their former captors. "It's too late," he whispered. "We have lost." In the underground command center, the humans monitored the dying Vorthak forces. There was no celebration, no joy in their victory. They had done what was necessary to survive, but they took no pleasure in causing death. "Is it over?" asked Nari. "For now," Kyung replied. "But there will be others. The Vorthak Empire won't accept this defeat quietly." "What do we do next?" wondered Do-hyun. Ji-won had been studying captured star charts and navigation equipment. "We have their ships now. We know where they came from, and we know where their other hunting preserves are located." "You want to rescue the other prey species?" Min-hee asked. "More than that," Ji-won said quietly. "I want to teach them what we've learned. I want to show them that prey animals don't have to remain prey." The idea was ambitious beyond anything they had previously considered. They would take the fight to the Vorthak Empire itself. They would free other enslaved species and unite them against their oppressors. "It's incredibly dangerous," Kyung pointed out. "We would be fighting an entire galactic empire with just a few hundred people." "A few hundred people who learn to fight back," Nari corrected, "and who can teach others to do the same." Over the next several days, they captured the remaining Vorthak ships and learned to operate them. The vessels were designed for hunting expeditions, not for war, but they could be modified. More importantly, they contained detailed information about the Vorthak Empire, the locations of other hunting preserves, the positions of major military bases, the identities of important leaders. "There are 47 active hunting preserves," Min-hee reported after studying the data. "Hundreds of different species being held captive. Some have been prisoners for generations." "Then we have work to do," Kyung said simply. As the first human-controlled ship lifted off from Nexus 7, the former prisoners looked back at the world that had been their prison and then their fortress. They had arrived as victims, but they were leaving as liberators. The Vorthak Empire had made a terrible mistake when they chose to hunt humans for sport. They had awakened something that the galaxy had never seen before, a species that became more dangerous when threatened, more creative under pressure, and absolutely ruthless when protecting others. The hunt was over. The war was just beginning, and this time, the humans would be doing the hunting. 6 months after leaving Nexus 7, the human liberation fleet had grown from 3 captured ships to over 50 vessels. They moved through space like a plague, freeing one hunting preserve after another and adding new allies to their cause. G1 stood on the bridge of their flagship, looking at the tactical display. Red dots showed Vorthak military positions throughout this sector of space. Blue dots represented liberated worlds where former prey species had joined their growing alliance. Next target is Hunting Preserve Gamma 12, she told the assembled commanders. Intelligence reports indicate they have over 2,000 prisoners from 15 different species. Among the commanders were faces that would have shocked the original Vorthak hunters, beings with fur and scales, creatures with multiple arms, or unusual skin colors. All species that had once been prey. Now they wore human-designed armor and carried human-modified weapons. Kyung had become the military leader of what they called the Liberation Alliance. His tactics had evolved far beyond the simple guerrilla warfare they had used on Nexus 7. Now he commanded fleets, coordinated planetary invasions, and fought battles on a scale that made the Vorthak Empire tremble. "The preserve is heavily defended," he warned the group. "They've learned from our previous attacks. They'll be expecting us." "Good," growled Tharkus, a reptilian being from Preserve Omega-3. His species had been enslaved by the Vorthak for over a century. "I want them to know we're coming." Nari had become their expert on alien biology and medicine. She had studied dozens of different species and learned to treat injuries and illnesses across multiple forms of life. More importantly, she had developed new biological weapons specifically designed to target Vorthak physiology. "The airborne compound is ready," she reported. "It will incapacitate Vorthak forces within minutes of release, but it's harmless to all known prey species." Do-Yun had mapped the entire sector of space controlled by the Vorthak hunting operations. He knew the location of every military base, supply depot, and communication relay. His knowledge had made their surprise attacks possible. "We hit them simultaneously at 17 different points," he explained, showing the battle plan. "They won't be able to coordinate a response." Minhee had become their intelligence chief. She could intercept and decode Vorthak communications, hack their computer systems, and plant false information in their networks. The aliens had no secrets from her anymore. "I've been monitoring their high command communications," she said. "They're planning something big, a massive military response to what they call the Prey Uprising." The room fell silent. Everyone knew this moment would come eventually. The Vorthak Empire would not tolerate the loss of their hunting preserves forever. "How big?" Kyung asked. "The Imperial Battle Fleet. Over 500 warships plus ground forces. They're calling it Operation Final Hunt." Jiwon felt a chill run down her spine. The Imperial Battle Fleet was the most powerful military force in this part of the galaxy. Their small alliance of liberated prey species could never face such an enemy in direct combat. "When?" she asked. "They're still gathering forces from across the Empire, maybe 2 months before they're ready to strike. Then we have 2 months to make sure they never get the chance," Kyung said grimly. The attack on Gamma 12 was their most ambitious operation yet. Instead of just liberating the preserve, they would capture the entire system and use it as a base for striking at the heart of Vorthak territory. The battle began with a coordinated assault on Vorthak communication networks. Minhe's cyber warfare. Teams disabled their ability to call for help or coordinate their defenses. At the same time, Nari's biological weapons were deployed throughout their air and water supplies. Do-hyun led the ground invasion, using tactics that combined human military knowledge with the unique abilities of their alien allies. Species that could fly provided air support. Those with natural camouflage abilities served as scouts and assassins. Creatures with enhanced strength became shock troops. The Vorthak defenders fought bravely, but they were facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that understood them completely. The humans had studied Vorthak psychology, tactics, and technology for months. They knew exactly how their enemies would respond to any situation. Ji-won coordinated the naval battle from the flagship. Human-modified ships fought alongside vessels, captured from previous operations. The space battle was fierce, but brief. The Vorthak ships were designed for hunting expeditions, not for facing a determined military force. Within 3 days, Gamma 12 was under Liberation Alliance control. Over 2,000 prisoners were freed, and the Vorthak garrison was either dead or captured. More importantly, they had seized a major communication hub that connected to the entire Vorthak military network. "Now we can listen to everything they say," Minhe reported with satisfaction. "And we can send them messages they'll never forget." The message went out simultaneously to every Vorthak military base, government facility, and noble family compound in the Empire. It was broadcast in a perfect Vorthak, spoken by Ji-won herself. "People of the Vorthak Empire, you have spent centuries hunting other species for your entertainment. You have enslaved, tortured, and murdered billions of intelligent beings. You believed that superior technology made you superior creatures. You were wrong. We are the species you called prey. We are the creatures you captured for sport. We are the beings you thought were weak and helpless. We have learned your weaknesses. We have stolen your technology. We have turned your own weapons against you. Your hunting days are over. Surrender now, and we will show you the mercy you never showed others. Continue to resist, and we will show you what happens when prey becomes predator." The message caused panic throughout the Vorthak Empire. For the first time in their history, they faced an enemy that was not only willing to fight back, but was actually winning. Emergency Council. Meetings were called on every major world. The noble families who had once enjoyed hunting expeditions now lived in fear. Some demanded immediate military action. Others wanted to negotiate for peace. Emperor Zexthul himself, the supreme ruler of the Vorthak Empire, made the decision that would determine the fate of his civilization. "Prepare Operation Final Hunt," he ordered. "We will crush these upstart prey animals once and for all. The honor of the Empire depends on it." But the humans had not been idle while the Vorthak prepared their response. Using their captured communication hub, they had been spreading their message to other species throughout the galaxy. The rebellion was growing beyond anything the Vorthak had imagined. When the Imperial battle fleet finally arrived at what they expected to be a simple mop-up operation, they found something that shocked them to their core. Waiting for them was not a small group of escaped prey animals, but a vast alliance of liberated species commanding hundreds of ships and supported by billions of fighters on dozens of worlds. The final battle lasted for weeks. It raged across multiple star systems and involved military forces on a scale that had never been seen before in this part of the galaxy. The Vorthak fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction. Their advanced technology and centuries of military experience made them formidable opponents. But they were fighting an enemy that had learned to adapt, innovate, and unite in ways they could never match. Human tactics combined with the unique abilities of dozens of different species created military strategies that the Vorthak could not counter. Every time they adapted to one approach, their enemies developed something new. When the final Vorthak battleship surrendered, Emperor Zexthul himself was brought before the Liberation Alliance leadership. The once mighty ruler of a galactic empire now stood in chains before the beings his people had once hunted for sport. Jiwan looked at him with a mixture of pity and determination. "Your empire is finished," she told him. "Your people will be relocated to worlds where they can live peacefully, but they will never again have the power to enslave other species." "You cannot destroy an entire civilization," the Emperor protested. "We are an advanced species. We have contributed knowledge and technology to the galaxy." "Knowledge and technology built on the suffering of others," Kyung replied. "Your contributions were paid for with the blood of your victims." "What will happen to us?" Zexthul asked. Nari stepped forward. "You will live. Your people will be given worlds to inhabit and the chance to build a new society. But it will be a society that respects the rights of all intelligent beings." "Why?" the Emperor asked, genuinely confused. "We showed no mercy to our prey. Why do you show mercy to us?" Do-hyun answered for all of them. "Because we are not you. We do not take pleasure in causing suffering. We fight because we must, not because we enjoy it." The transformation of the galaxy took years to complete. The Liberation Alliance worked to heal the damage caused by centuries of Vorthak hunting. Destroyed civilizations were rebuilt. Extinct species were restored using genetic samples from Vorthak laboratories. Billions of enslaved beings were returned to their home worlds. Jiwan often stood on the bridge of exploration ships, looking out at stars that now represented free worlds instead of hunting preserves. The galaxy was a very different place then. It had been when she was a simple marine biologist studying coral reefs on Earth. "Do you ever regret what we became?"